I'm Ryan. I'm a science teacher.
I'm Cheryl, and I slept through science.
Each episode will tackle a science question you may have learned in school, but can't quite remember or fully explain.
And I'll take the risk of asking the dumb questions so that we can all understand the science we slept through.
The bell has rung. Let's get started. Welcome to lesson 31. We are in our color unit. Colorful questions today, Cheryl?
Ooh, yes, I do have one.
Well, actually, you're only allowed one because in our last lesson, you said you only had 4 and you've used one of them. So you can only have one this week and then however many more.
Okay, great. Well, I have exactly one question.
Perfect.
Today. You know, ever since we talked about why the sky is blue last week, I just have been just so proud of myself for knowing, you know, that like classic science question and everything. Until I remembered about sunrises and sunsets.
Why? What's the problem with those?
Excuse me. Well, those are not blue at all.
Well, that's true. They're not.
They're like really not. They're like everything but blue. So what's the deal with those? Why are sunrises and sunsets not blue?
So basically, you're accusing me of lying to you last lesson because I said the sky was blue. And now you're like, no, it's not. It's also red and like yellowish.
And purple and pink and so many colors. I feel bamboozled.
Yeah. Okay. All righty. So the question this week is, why did you lie to me?
Yes.
Mr. Palmer.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Got it. All right. Well, let's just start with, what do you think? What do you think leads to those different colors for sunrises and sunsets?
Well, so one thing I have observed in all my years as a Washingtonian is that the best sunsets are when clouds are present.
Oh, okay.
Because sometimes you think like, ooh, it's a clear day. And we get so few of those around here. But on those clear days, you're like, I'm going to be able to actually see the sunset, which feels very fancy. And then if it is an absolutely clear day, then, I mean, the sky gets this really fun, like ombre color going on. So I do like that.
Wow.
Yeah. There's like this whole fun fadey, and it still changes color, but it just kind of like changes color and then like boop, and then it's gone.
Okay.
And so that's fine and whatever. But the like gorgeous, amazing sunsets are when you have some clouds along that horizon. And all of a sudden, like the clouds are getting lit up all fun too. And those are the really amazing sunsets. So that really doesn't answer why, but I think that is an element at play.
Okay.
And then also we were talking about sunshines being yellow.
Sunshines.
And, you know, in general, the sun has like a warm tone, and it gets like very warm toned during a sunrise or a sunset where it looks more like orange and red as opposed to yellow. So that's interesting too. But I don't know why it would just be so different, because the atmosphere is the same, whether it's at an angle or not. And also it's weird because if you think about like our round Earth and the fact that when we are watching like a sunrise, then like on the East Coast, the sky is blue.
Okay.
So it's just from our like perspective that it looks a different color. It's not like, because we were talking about how like a whole like entire like half of the globe is lit up at once, you know, while the sun is on it. However, like there's some people on that edge who aren't getting that blue sky, and then everybody else gets that blue sky, and then you don't get it again. But it's not like everybody experiences that at the same time. So it has to do something with the angle then.
Okay. The angle of what?
Well, us compared to the sun, because when we're directly below it, the sky is blue. But when it's angled and like on the horizon, the sky is no longer blue. Well, except for on the far side, the side where the sun is not, the other horizon, That's still like blue, and then it just gets dark and starts looking more like a night sky eventually.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So what do you think is the cause?
Well, is it like all of those blue wavelengths are bouncing around and they get all used up, and then the other wavelengths come out our direction?
What do you mean get used up?
Well, I don't know. They're like bouncing all around the sky, and then all those other wavelengths that aren't in the blue sky are like shooting off at some like intense angle. And then you see them just swing around the very horizon.
Why would it be the horizon versus somewhere else?
Because that's where the sky is blue.
At the
Somewhere
horizon?
else. No, somewhere else is where the sky is blue.
Oh, so they're just
But
trying
when
to get away from where the sky's blue.
no, I mean, like, this one's like really a head scratcher for me
Okay.
because I like just came to terms with the fact of like why the sky is blue.
Yeah.
And now it's like in direct opposition.
Yeah. Again, I've lied to you. Yeah. Okay. Gotcha. Well, believe it or not, you have quite a few ideas that make a lot of sense that I can pretty easily build on.
Yay.
And the first thing to build on is what you talked about actually at the very, very end. You mentioned that the blue wavelengths maybe get used up.
Uh-huh.
And you're actually pretty close to accurate with that.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. See, you think through things quite well. So I'll do my best to sort of explain, and I have a really, really not high-tech visual for you.
Cool.
And it does actually come down to the shape of the Earth, and the Earth being a sphere. That does matter. And some of the other things you mentioned about, like, if we're on the West Coast and what's the East Coast seeing and all those things, they're all connected. So we'll kind of tie all of those things in. But to simplify, if I put my hand like this-ish, well, that's not very good. Maybe do it like this. Okay, you can sort of see the roundedness kind of my hand.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not flat. I'm not holding it flat. I'm kind of curving my fingers a little bit.
Ryan is putting his hand like he is putting it on his little invisible nephew's shoulder.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah,
giving him a little loving shoulder.
Shoulder. Yeah.
Yeah, shoulder.
Yeah, so it's rounded just a little bit. That's to kind of represent the surface of the Earth.
Okay.
Right. During the day, the sun is more or less pointing down from our perspective, right? So it's shining down on us. But at sunrise and sunset, we're seeing the sun at an angle like this, right? So it's shining at an angle. Our atmosphere has a thickness.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Sure.
Right. And it's more or less the same thickness all the way around the whole Earth. Obviously, it's not this. The amount that I'm doing is greatly exaggerated and not to scale, but there's a thickness to it, right? And so when you're going straight down, most of the time during the day, the sunlight is passing through about the same amount of air.
Okay.
Does that make sense? Because it's poking more or less straight down. But when it gets to the angle, now it's going through, and there'll be a short period of time where it can actually go through the very edge and kind of slide past the surface of the Earth, which means it's going through a whole lot more of the atmosphere.
Oh, it's like the angled part on a triangle.
Okay, tell me more.
A right angled triangle.
Uh-huh. Now Cheryl's trying to make a triangle with her fingers.
That's the hypotenuse, right?
The hypotenuse is the side that's the longest.
Yeah, it's like the hypotenuse. That will be longer than the other sides because it's an angle. So the sun's going through the hypotenuse of the atmosphere as opposed to straight down, a straight line. Because the angled line will be longer.
Yes. Yes. I'm not seeing how the other two sides play in at all, but yes, it's going in at an angle.
Okay.
Yes, it's going at an angle, which means it's going through more of the atmosphere.
Yeah.
Does that part make sense?
Yes.
Okay.
That's why I said the thing about the triangle, because if it goes straight down, it's like one of the straight sides of the triangle.
Oh, I see.
Shorter.
So you're making like the vertex of the triangle, one of the points that the sides come to, like inside the earth, basically.
Yeah. Yep.
Gotcha. Then yes, I see what you're. Okay, that took a little bit for me to. So it's like this, and so we'd have like a line going like this, and a line going like this, and then a line going like this.
Yeah.
Which is great podcasting, by the way. It
Mhm.
goes like this, and then it goes like this, and then it goes like this.
Yes. But our listeners can check out our YouTube where they can watch us mime weird things with our hands.
Yeah, why not? Because that would be fun. So anyway, it's going through more of the atmosphere, which means there's more time for more of that light to get scattered.
Oh, okay.
Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
And so it's not so much getting used up per se, but you've gone through enough of the atmosphere that that blue light has all been scattered away, which means what you're left with now are the reds and the oranges and yellows, that side of the spectrum. Now, technically, not all the blue light has been scattered away because, you can get purples and things like that, which is kind of a red and a blue mix and things like that. So it's not all of it, but so much more of it gets scattered away. And so that's why you see it at sunrises and sunsets, because that angle that the sun is passing through, the sunlight is passing through the atmosphere, is about the same, whether it's a sunrise or a sunset. And so those longer wavelengths do scatter. They just don't scatter as easily as the shorter wavelengths, like the blues. And so once you have enough atmosphere, you start to see some of the scattering of those longer wavelengths.
Oh.
So first of all, some of it's left over. And second of all, it does start to do a little of that scattering as well, enough that we can see it because there's a lot more of that space.
Cool.
And so then when you were talking about, well, what if we're on the West Coast and the East Coast, then I have to go back to my silly hand example, right? And so if we are at a point where it's, let's say daytime is over here on, what is that to you? Is that the right side or the left side?
That's my left side.
Your left side. Okay. I wasn't sure if it was flipped or not. So on the left side here, and this is where the sun, because the sun's setting, but that means daytime is all down here because the sun's over here, right? So the sun's shining on this whole part of the earth here that my hand isn't.
Yeah.
Now I'm really doing weird hand things. Right?
Yeah.
So this is all getting light. The back part over here isn't getting any light. Do I have a ball? This would work so much better if I had a ball. I don't think so. Oh, what about a fist? How about that? There we go.
There we go.
Right. So this side, so if here's the sun, it's shining this way. If you're having a sunrise or a sunset, you're like here-ish, right? Because you're about to go off into the dark side of the earth, not of the force. Am I just totally going off the deep end? This is not helpful at all.
No, this is helpful. I already noticed your parody Star Wars shirt earlier, so it was fun to hear you talk about the dark side.
For sure. So we've got sunlight here that's still going more or less straight down. And so if you're on the other part, like the East Coast, like you said, it's much straighter. So they still see the blue sky. But where we are, if we're like here-ish, that's where it's gone through a lot more of that atmosphere. And so the light that we would see ends up being scattering. But that's also why when you look in other directions, you mentioned like if you look back and it's just kind of a darker and a darker bluish, right? Well, that's just kind of the dark side. What you're really just seeing is the night side once it's through the sunset, if you will.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Okay. And then you mentioned at the very beginning, you talked about clouds.
Yeah.
Right? And clouds do make it better. But the reason is because they are reflecting whatever those wavelengths are back at us. Because some of those wavelengths, if you think about it, some of those wavelengths might pass straight through and go out the other side of the atmosphere.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Right? Because unless they run into something or they get scattered, they're just going to pass through. And so some of them do get scattered so we can see them. But if there are clouds, that's something for them to bounce off of for then us to see those colors a little bit more. And so we can see them accentuated that much more, and we see even more of the color if there's the clouds there.
That all makes sense.
Okay.
Follow-up question.
Yes.
So on a semi-cloudy day,
Yep.
why is the sky not even bluer?
Tell me what you mean by why the sky would be bluer.
Well, clouds make the light bounce off more and make the sunset even more vibrant. But when there's blue sky and some clouds, it looks less vibrant. And it's more like the blue gets covered up. Does the blue not like to bounce around in the clouds?
So when I'm talking about bouncing, I'm talking about reflecting, not scattering.
Oh, okay.
Bouncing off. So the light that has already scattered, so it's already separated out into colors, is bouncing kind of like in our last lesson, I talked about light bouncing off the wall behind me.
Yeah.
Right? Think of the clouds as being, they're not solid, but think of them as being a solid surface that light can bounce off of.
But so the same question, that makes sense. But same question then, when we get clouds during the daytime, it just makes it more dreary. It seems like there's less light. So you only get the cool bouncing off at like a sunset, but during the
because
daytime,
they're bouncing from underneath the clouds.
Oh,
Right? Because of the angle is coming and then it's hitting the bottom side of the clouds. Whereas most of the time the sunlight's coming from above the clouds.
Got it. Okay.
And so yeah, so when the clouds are in the way, they actually, because they are mostly white.
Yeah.
Especially the surface. If you've ever been on a plane, even if it's really thick, the clouds always look white from above. But that means they're reflecting that sunlight back out into space.
Got it. Okay.
And so there's less light that we see, so it's darker and drearier below the clouds.
Got it. That makes sense.
Yes?
Yeah.
Good question. Quiz time!
Okay.
Oh, that was like acceptance right there. Awesome. Now this first question hopefully will not surprise you.
Okay.
Which wavelengths of light are shorter and which wavelengths of light are longer?
The longer ones are warm and the shorter ones are cool.
Give me examples of colors.
Red, orange, yellow, warm. Green, blue, purple, purple, cool.
All right, way to go. Remember I told you I was going to ask you again.
Oh, that's right.
You didn't even remember. Okay. See, but now you're remembering, and your mnemonic that you came up with during the last lesson was helping.
I know, I think it actually did.
Yeah, for sure. Like legit. Yeah. Okay. What is different about the sun's interaction with the atmosphere during the day versus its interaction with the atmosphere during sunrise and sunset?
During the day, the sunlight is going more straight down to the earth, which means it's a shorter distance of atmosphere that it has to go to. So all that blue light just goes ham. And then during sunset and sunrise, it is at such a strong angle that it has to go through an angle of the atmosphere, or the hypotenuse, you could say.
You could.
And angled lines are longer than straight lines, or diagonal lines. And so the blue light already bounced around a lot, and eventually those warm lights start they're interacting with enough atmosphere that they are bouncing off of some things, and the blue light already did its thing. So now we see the rest of the colors, or the warm colors. Yeah.
The blue light already did its thing.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, great. And that kind of already answers the next question, which why isn't the sky blue during sunrise or sunset?
Yeah. See above.
See above.
Yes.
That's the part where you draw an arrow up to that part for the previous question. Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. Last question. Why can the sky be blue in one part of the world and red in another part at the same time?
Because the earth is round, Ryan.
Are you sure?
Yeah.
Okay, how does the earth being round have to do with it?
I thought you were going to ask me how I know the earth is round. And I was like, I mean, I've been on an airplane. How am I sure that the earth being round has to do with it? Because then it's going to be different angles depending on where you are.
What's
on the
different
earth.
angles?
The angle that the light has to go through to reach you.
Mm-hmm.
It's not all about you. There are other people in other parts of the world experiencing different things than you.
Are there, though?
Yeah. Some of them listen to this podcast, so watch it.
Oh, okay. Good point. Yeah. So the angle in some parts of the world, the sun is more or less directly straight up and down again, or at least much straighter, whereas only in a few places is it actually at such a steep angle to go ahead and scatter out most of that blue light. There you go.
It's pretty cool.
Look at that. Now you can explain sunrises and sunsets. You know why the sky is blue. You know wavelengths. You're becoming a color expert, Cheryl.
Yeah. I'm going to use that to tell people what their season is and what colors they should and shouldn't wear.
Yes, because that's definitely what we've been talking about and what you've been learning.
Yes.
For sure. All righty. Well, that's all the time we have for this week's lesson. So why don't you pack up your stuff and get ready for my closing remarks. You can follow us on Instagram and Facebook at I Slept Through Science or on Twitter at Slept Science.
If you have dumb science questions like I do, please send them to us. You can email us at isleptthroughscience@gmail.com, or you can even send us a voice memo and we'll play it on the podcast.
Please rate and review our podcast to tell other people what you think about it, subscribe to make sure you don't miss an episode, and share about our podcast on social media.
Thank you to Beth Reed Miller for the artwork. You can check out more of Beth's artwork at Beth Is Something. Okay, great. Thanks. Bye.
The bell doesn't dismiss you. I dismiss you.